In our family, it was very, very important for us to not just be given anything. So we had to truly earn our stripes, work our way up. I literally started sweeping the floors in the warehouse. By the time I took on a leadership role, I had done pretty much every single job in the company.
Welcome to $100 Million Blueprint. We're your hosts, Jonathan Ferrari and Neil Cuggy, the founders of Goodfood. Whether you're scaling your own business, leading a growing team, or just curious about what it takes to build something big, this podcast's for you.
In each episode, we sit down with the brightest minds in business to discuss the real secrets to scaling. No fluff, no corporate jargon, just actionable advice that works. We share lessons learned from being owners and co-owners in businesses valued over $290 million.
Today, we're diving deep with an incredible guest who's got a track record of growing a business from the ground up. This is $100 Million Blueprint.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to $100 Million Blueprint, the podcast where we uncover how elite businesses scale while staying true to their values. Today, we're diving into the intricate process of family business succession, innovation in a mature industry, and how young leaders can drive change while maintaining tradition. Our guest today is Jeff Courey, President and CEO of George Courey Inc., a 115-year-old textile company that's a staple in the healthcare and hospitality industries. As a fourth-generation leader, Jeff has overseen remarkable growth, including a strategic pivot during COVID that resulted in some massive growth. Jeff has a unique perspective on balancing the heritage of family-run businesses with the need for innovation and modernization. Please welcome Jeff to the show. Welcome.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
It took me a couple times through our friendship to get to know what George Courey actually does. Maybe we start there off the top with kind of what the business is, how it's been transitioned through your family over the past 4 generations, and what you guys are known for today. And it'll give us a little kind of situational awareness of where we're going.
Yeah, awesome. So George Courey is... it was founded a long time ago, 1910. So like you said, we're 115 years old. I'm fourth generation along with my brother of ownership of the business, and we run the company together. And so we sell, the way I like to explain it to people is we sell everything soft and washable that you can find in a hotel room, hospital room, nursing home room, or gym, etc. So anything soft and washable. So when you think about, you walk into a hotel room, so it'll be the linens on the bed, the duvet that's on the bed, the pillow, the towels in the bathroom, and everything in between. And then on the healthcare side, it's everything from the gowns that you wear when you're a patient at the hospital to the scrubs that the staff wears to surgical gowns that doctors wear, and as well like the sheets, towels, blankets, etc. So we sell all of that across North America. We manufacture around the world and sell across North America. So that's essentially what we do. But it has changed over the years. So it wasn't always what we did. We've been in many different areas of textiles. You know, it wasn't always B2B. It was B2C at one point. We were in flooring at one point. We were in a lot of retail textiles at one point. But today we're very focused on B2B and serving those sectors in particular.
Amazing. And was it part of your leadership direction to kind of narrow some of the focus there, or was it something that happened with your dad's generation running the business?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background. So the company was founded by my great-grandfather, who is George Courey, back in 1910, and he had 7 kids. And so at one point, there were 7 siblings kind of working in the business and running the business. Then from those 7, when it was my grandfather, he had 4 kids, 3 of which were working in the business. And so for a while, it was my dad and my 2 uncles that were running the company. And then in 2019, so right before COVID hit, I was named president and CEO of the business. So started to already kind of shift the company a little bit. And then we bought out my 2 uncles, and so my dad remained. And then my brother and I bought out my dad in 2021. So the transition to new leadership did happen many different times in the history of our company. But more recently, it was a gradual transition, not necessarily from ownership, but from the leader of the business, because I was named president before I became an owner of the company. And so certainly in the last, 7 to 8 years, I think I've had a big influence on where the company is focused. And yes, so we have focused in. We have also expanded quite a bit. So the company has well over triple our recurring revenues from when we started in 2019 to where we're at today. And during COVID, we had some explosive years as well, where we were doing, the important work of protecting our doctors and nurses and first responders, et cetera. So we worked really hard to do that. And so here we are. So yes, have focused a lot, but also just implemented a different strategy than I think in the past, which you have to do in long-standing businesses, whether it's a family business or otherwise. Any long-standing business that you see, you'll see many different pivots along the way. And we're at one of those pivot points right now in our company for sure.
Amazing. Looking forward to getting into that a little bit more as well. And John, jump in as we go here. But can you talk a little bit about some of the cultural shift of taking over the reins from, I guess it was your dad and kind of your uncles on the periphery there as well? Like, how do you manage that kind of sensitive situation, right? Like when when we think about buying a business or investing in a new management team, we try to make it as kind of sudden and clear as possible, right? It's like one day to the next, you don't want to drag anything on. But I think your dad still has an office in the building, and you give him responsibility and everything. So it's kind of the opposite of how we thought about doing it. So can you talk through some of that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in our family, it was very, very important for us to not just be given anything. So we had to truly earn our stripes, work our way up. Like I literally started sweeping the floors in the warehouse. Almost got fired on my first day on the job, to be quite honest, because I packed a truck in the wrong way. But that's a story for another day. So by the time I took on a leadership role, I had done pretty much every single job in the company. So had gained a bit of credibility. We had a lot of long-standing employees, as is common, I think, in family businesses, but certainly long-standing businesses. We had a lot of long-term employees. So for many, many years, I was always the youngest guy in the room. And so had to earn my way, earn respect, earn credibility, and then grew into a leadership position. And it was very natural. So in terms of the culture within George Courey, just because my last name happens to be on the side of the building, I don't think truly influenced the way people perceived me as a leader, because I think I proved myself along the way. And so that was very important to me. There's a lot of other family businesses where they have kind of rules where before family can enter the company, they have to work elsewhere and gain experience outside of the company and then come in. So we didn't do that. And, one of the reasons was my first year when I graduated university, it was 2008 is when I finished my undergrad. It was the same year that we had bought a new company. So we bought a towel mill in Cambridge, Ontario, and it was a huge undertaking for us. There was a few hundred employees there. It was the last standing towel mill in Canada and one of only 3 or 4 in North America. And so we had just bought that company, and my dad was kind of like, well, I know you just graduated and, typically you should get your feet wet elsewhere, but come on in, we need you to work full time. And this was, I'd already had kind of a part-time role as I was working, as I was in school, and had worked obviously every summer. So I was very familiar with the company already. But I was never pushed into the business, but there was this sense of like, we know you're going to come in eventually, so you might as well come in now. Like, let's go. So that was really interesting in terms of onboarding. Like I was literally in board meetings from early on as like taking notes and stuff, and so just learning from the beginning. But in terms of growing up in George Courey, I think that it was earned, and I think that even today, I mean, most of my employees are older than me. So talking about being young leaders like you guys, it's something that I'm used to. And when you walk into a room, you have to walk in with presence, or else you won't get the respect of the group. And so it's something I always took to heart.
One of my mentors told me, you're going to be the youngest guy in the room until suddenly you're not anymore, and it's going to happen like overnight. And you're going to be like, oh my goodness, what just happened here? But yeah, like we're still mostly the youngest people in the room pretty often. What are Jeff? What are some of the things that you did in the earlier days to earn that respect? Like you talked about really earning your path in the business and proving yourself. What is it like? Can you get into the specifics around what you did and how you felt it was effective to build that respect?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was a lot about working the hardest. So I think, I mean, it sounds simple, but it was about working the hardest. And so, first one there in the morning, last one to leave, but also having purpose in every meeting you're in, making your voice heard. And I didn't know everything, right? And so I was asking the right questions. I think I'm famous here, even to this day, of saying, guys, I've never worked anywhere else, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But here's what I think. Now, tell me from your experience, is does that resonate with you? And it's the truth. Like, I have never worked in any other business in my life, so I think that it was always asking the right questions and gaining respect in that way. But you can't beat hard work, right? And so I think that people recognize that, and I became like a resource for a lot of people early on. Listening skills obviously very important, but being able to actually act on something and not just come in with talk. So I made a lot of changes along the way, and they were incremental, but people saw that things were getting done. And especially in a long-standing old family business kind of thing, sometimes it could be slower moving than people like. So I think it was kind of like this burst of energy, and we started to get things done, and we made changes that way. And another famous saying we have here in our company is, we're 100-year-old startup. And it's like this tagline that I like to say within the company, especially for new recruits, which is like, hey, just because we've been doing something for decades doesn't mean we're doing it right. And let's be constantly reinventing ourselves, whether it's, higher level strategic thinking or even just more at the operational level. Come in with new ideas, and we're going to listen to those ideas, and we're going to evaluate whether they're the right thing to do. So there is no wrong. Because that is, I think, the biggest risk, not only for family businesses, but for long-standing businesses, is just complacency in operations and SOPs and everything. You got to be constantly looking at that stuff and making changes. The moment you stop doing that and think you have it all figured out, you're going to start to see that you'll get left behind by your competitors. So we have that culture here for sure. It makes a big difference.
The dynamics between your brother and you taking over the business, like how did you guys decide? Like, was it predetermined that you would be the CEO or president and then CEO, and he would kind of be whatever other title at the time, or is that something that you guys competed for? And it's one of the things that I hear a lot about in terms of family succession, right?
We had like a fight to the death. It was like this one moment. No, I'm kidding.
I bet your brother, so I guess it didn't end.
It's not all I want. That's not that didn't happen. No, you know what? It's kind of funny, and we're very fortunate in this regard. So number one, my brother and I knew that this was the path for us, that the company was the path for us. We were never pushed into the company, but we knew from a very, very young age that this is what we wanted to do. And then we're also, I think, very self-aware. So my brother's name is Rob. So he's very self-aware. Rob's a brilliant salesperson. So he loves being with clients. He loves entertaining clients. He loves caring for clients and that sort of thing. And he's really good at that. So we always knew that he would kind of gravitate towards the ambassador side of the business and more customer facing. And I always had like a knack for numbers and for operational efficiencies and that kind of stuff. So it was very organic in that sense. And we've just had that understanding from day one, my brother and I. And I feel like you guys have that same kind of dynamic where you have you both have your strengths and your niches, and then you just like work to your strengths, and that's what makes a good partnership work. So it doesn't matter that he's my brother. I would pick him as a business partner anyways, even if he wasn't my brother, because we complement each other really well. So I think we've been very, very lucky in that regard. And it's worked for us for now. I'm able to focus on the things that I need to focus on, and he focus on what he needs to focus on. And it's worked out quite well for us.
We do have, Neil and I have that similar dynamic. We had originally not really split the roles in the business. And then we were closing our first round of financing. And we were like, oh crap, we should probably put someone as CEO and then someone as president. And I think it was like a 2-minute conversation from what I remember. We were kind of just like, all right, let's just do this. But, I'll consult Neil on every important decision in the business. Do you have that kind of working relationship with your brother as well? Or do you tend to really split out the spheres of influence and not get into each other's ways?
I mean, it's a great question. And so like I said, I've never worked in any other business in my life, nor has my brother. So we will very rarely make decisions, just the two of us. So I count a lot on our senior leadership team. We call them our executive team. So all big decisions are kind of run through the committee. And we lean on those people very, very much. So it's less about my brother and I, and it's more about how we make decisions as a team within the company. We need that. So we need that outside influence for sure. And it's worked out quite well for us, I think, any good business, that is how it should be run. Definitely you need the final decision maker, but when you're making decisions in a silo, you're asking for trouble. So we tend to do things as a committee.
Really interesting. One of the things you mentioned right before we started recording the conversation is that you don't consider yourself to be an entrepreneur, and yet I heard you say a couple of times so far that since you were very young, you saw yourself being in the business and you knew it was the path for you. So why is it that you don't see yourself as an entrepreneur, and what do you identify with instead?
So, I mean, I know that there's some people, I think, like yourselves, that love building businesses, that like, seeing a need or see something in the market and trying to create a solution for it. I get a rise on growing businesses. I think that's what was always very important to me. So, I did my school, I went to my MBA, I had a lot of options. I could have done a lot of different things, but I always tell people that even if I weren't to join the family business, I love the industry that we're in because it's safe, it's stable. I think that's just how I'm wired. Like, I have a tolerance for risk, but it's a different kind of risk than the life of an entrepreneur. Like, it would scare me to death to have to start from zero and build something up, So I always knew that the company, we're old business, solid foundation. And I knew that, as did every generation in my family before me, started with a solid foundation and then built it up. I always knew that that's kind of the path that I wanted to take. I knew that my risk tolerance wasn't there to start from scratch, but it really excited me to take something from here and get it to here. And that's how I've always looked at it. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur because I've never built a business from scratch, but certainly we are entrepreneurial in the way we operate. So I've talked about how we consider ourselves a 100-year-old startup. It's very true. And so, we take risks. We've grown the business quite a bit over the last few years, and there are entrepreneurial aspects to the job. But I give a lot of credit to you guys who have the courage to say, you know what, like, let's start from something from nothing and build it up to something special. I think that takes a special kind of person. And so I think I get a rush on growing a company and being strategic with a nice foundation behind me versus starting from scratch.
Going back to when you were named president and then started to see some of the changes in COVID, plus the 3x growth in recurring revenue, as you mentioned, can you kind of take us through some of the changes, decisions, maybe some of the riskier moments in some of those meetings that you were like, oh, is this the right way? Or is this new market the right thing? Or I know you guys do a lot of global supply chain work as well, which probably has its own stories and challenges. So can you kind of talk through some of the path there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took over as president. I was COO previously, but took over as president and CEO in December 2019. And COVID hit March 2020, right? And so coming in as president, I had big plans to expand our company into the United States. So we went 100 and whatever years purely in Canada. So our entire revenue stream came from Canada. So my big thing was we need to expand to our neighbors in the South. And we had already gained a pretty good reputation through conferences, and I sat on a few nonprofit boards, like industry boards and stuff like that. So we had built a little bit of a network. So we had a very clear path, a very clear strategy of how we were going to expand into the US, and had started implementing that strategy towards the end of 2019 and into 2020. And then COVID hit, right? And so for the first few weeks of COVID, we were kind of sitting back and wondering, what are we going to do? Just like the rest of the world, we had sent our people to work from home. We had never done that before. It's a classic story. We've all heard that a million times. But the aha moment was when I was watching CNN and they were talking about a potential shortage of isolation gowns in the market. And I said, oh, well, we have those. So we make isolation gowns. Just to give you an idea, like before COVID in a typical year, we would make about 100,000 isolation gowns, and all made in China per year. That's about what we would sell. In the year 2020, we sold over 10 million units of isolation gowns. So it was quite a shift for us. And so, and this is don't forget me about 4 months into my term as president of the company.
You look like a genius.
I mean, it was unbelievable, unbelievable. And it's a long story, which we can talk about another time. But it was a big chunk of those 10 million were mandated by the Canadian government to make them in Canada, and so. Like I said, we were making them mainly in China before, and we had to build essentially a factory from scratch in the middle of the pandemic. And we pumped out about 4 to 5 million units out of a makeshift factory in Saint Jean sur Richelieu in over a 6-month period. So, which involved hiring about 400 people during that time to get the job done. And it was a challenging time as a new leader of the business, but one that let's call it was a great distraction to the realities of the world at that time. So we were busy, like no sleep. We had managers sleeping at the factory, like that kind of thing. It was a wild time. But so what that ended up doing was essentially fast forwarding our shift into the U.S. market. And so right away, we had a product that was in high demand across the U.S., which opened a ton of doors. And we were able to retain a lot of that business after that surge of need in PPE kind of went down over time. And so we were able to keep some of those clients, and today they're considered excellent partners of George Courey, and that kind of really fast forwarded our plans. And so it was a journey. And we're still on that journey very much this day. And it was a really good experience thing all around. It wasn't a great experience for a lot of people in the world, but it was a good business experience for us in that moment. Yeah.
John and I often talk about that COVID kind of first 6 months. There's a lot of people that obviously had to furlough employees, shut down businesses, didn't know what the future looked like, and a lot of companies that were completely opposite end of the spectrum. Sounds like you guys were on that side, and Goodfood was definitely on that side as well, where you're onboarding hundreds of people a week. I think our peak week was probably 1,000 people per week that we were hiring. We were signing leases across the country, trying to give business to other businesses that were shutting down to kind of spread the demand across facilities and keep everybody working and safe. And you just had the total like bifurcation of what happened to people, and fear on both sides, right? Like fear of too much demand, keep people safe. Am I gonna be able to meet next week's orders? And fear, obviously, of people losing their jobs and maybe not opening their business again at the time. So
it changed everyone's strategic plan, right? So I mean, we had a very good plan we were happy with, we were executing on, and then it just changes everything, right? And which is why it's very much my leadership philosophy as well, is you have to be able to pivot today. You have to be able to pivot quickly. For example, we don't own any of our manufacturing around the world. So we partner with amazing factories around the world. And that's all by design because, I wouldn't want to have ownership in a Chinese factory back when Trump's first term. And now in this term, with things changing so quickly in the global marketplace, you got to be able to shift with that, with those changes. And so that's very much our philosophy is we need like companies like ours, anybody who's importing today essentially needs to stay nimble, but it goes beyond just, manufacturing, and it goes beyond like a mindset in a company. So we try to instill that mindset quite a bit in our company, which is stay nimble, stay flexible, always be kind of pivoting to market changes. And for that reason, like we don't have a black and white 5-year plan. So we do kind of annual objectives that have action plans around them and key results attached to those. And we review those on a quarterly basis because in today's world, things change so quickly. And what made sense, last quarter, maybe doesn't make sense this quarter. And so we're constantly looking at it. So 100-year-old startup, it's exactly the same mentality in our strategy as well.
It reminds me of the other moment in our pandemic experience, Neil, when we had lawyers telling us, okay, in order to keep running your manufacturing facility, you got to try to get like a note or something from the government that says, that proves that you're an essential business. Otherwise, just shut down and like close the doors and move on. And we looked at each other and we're like, are they crazy? Like, by the time the government writes a piece of paper saying any business is an essential business, we're going to be 5 years out, right? And we're going to have vaccines and we're going to have moved on. And so we were like, it's pretty obvious we're an essential business. We're just going to, we're selling food and delivering food to people. So we kept going. But I remember that moment of being like, are you serious? We're going to wait for the bureaucracy to send us a note? Like that's insane.
It's so funny. You're so right. And that was a huge concern for us as well. Within a week, we had a designation of essential service, and it was important because we wouldn't have been able to operate otherwise. And if everybody has COVID stories, but
protective equipment is an essential
it is
service
essential
during a pandemic. I mean, it makes sense. Like,
exactly. But it was surreal driving home at night. At that time, literally nobody on the road. You're the only one on the road. I felt quite essential. Yeah.
I remember just how quiet it was stepping outside of our manufacturing facility too. Like typically, right in front of the building here, there's a really busy street and there's like, there's just lineups of 18-wheeler trucks, and it was just dead quiet, in the afternoon. One of the things I was curious to hear about is you kind of talked about the protective equipment being a way into the US. And then as that demand naturally started fading, what is it that you did to replace that business with the customers in the US? What did you find effective in making sure that you could continue growing past that?
Yeah, so we kind of reverted back to our original US expansion plan, which was we had a very specific targeted group of customers that we were focused on. In this case, it was healthcare laundries, and then we executed the strategy from 2019. It was just a few years later with a little bit of a head start. But our plan essentially was some of our competitors are multi-billion-dollar companies, and so while we're not a small business, we're not as big as them, and so we were kind of filling a niche in the marketplace, and that was what our in was. It was, hey, give us your hard projects, let us execute for you, see what we can do, and then we'll prove ourselves and go from there. So there was a lot of hard projects that we were executing on during COVID, and we kind of gained a good reputation of being reliable and consistent quality, et cetera, and then just killed it with service. And I think that's where anyone entering a new market, you kind of, you put all the metrics aside, the profit margins aside, you try to build a business based on service, reliability, get a reputation, and then you can start growing from there. That was very much our strategy. And for me, it was important to stay focused in that strategy. So we had a very targeted group of customers that we were going after. So we looked at it less so from a geographic perspective and more from a type of client perspective. And don't forget, we're strictly B2B. So it was a nice segment of the market that we were focused on. And then we executed a strategy. And then that strategy absolutely changed. It's funny. Originally, our plan was we were going to distribute out of our Canadian warehouses down to the US. And we said, you know what, it's okay. Well, clients can wait 4 or 5 days to get their goods and it should be fine. We very, very quickly learned that, especially in the US market, when you're servicing hospitals, you need stuff quickly. And so it was next day delivery or nothing. And so that immediately kind of shifted what our strategy was. fast forward to today, where we had zero warehouses and distribution centers in 2019 to where we now have 5 across the U.S., and we're distributing next day to the entire continental USA. So not at all part of our original strategic plan. We had a very different image of what we were going to do, but became essential in our growth in the U.S. market. And the way we're pacing right now, our U.S. business should surpass our Canadian business within the next 3 to 5 years. So it was essential to what we were doing.
Congrats! It sounds like an incredible expansion plan, and it's amazing to hear how you were listening to your customer and iterating on the plan in real time.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what we did. And I think that is the key to it, especially when you're the new entrant in a new market. It's a lot of listening. And I think our team does a really good job of listening and pivoting to what the customer requires, whether it's a special spec, whether it's a service level. And that's how we've been successful and gained a good reputation. And then it's about being market leaders as well. It's like we were talking before, we started a podcast as well, our company, to try to reach a broader audience. And it's something that hadn't really been done in our industry. So as much as George Courey is a longstanding, older business, the industry that we serve is also a very long-standing industry, right? So sheets and towels have been around for a very long time. And so we're trying also to reinvent the game. And when you're, the smaller player in a new market, you got to be creative. And I think our team has done a good job of doing that. And because of that, we've gained reputation. We've gained a lot of traction faster than I think we initially thought, because we do things a little bit different, And so it's also a matter of being a young leader. I think it's understanding today the way to get in front of your customers. The cost of customer acquisition is a metric that we take seriously, and I think we do it a little bit differently. You don't always need to add boots on the ground, the traditional sales rep on the ground. You can reach customers in a different way. Customers are on LinkedIn, customers are Googling things, they're using ChatGPT now. So figure out ways to kind of get in front of them that aren't the traditional ways, from my MBA days. It's like even it wasn't that long ago, but today's world is vastly different. And so I think that it's been a big part of our strategy is to think different, do things a little bit unique, and then execute. And then you got to just execute, and you got to be true to your word to clients, and build a reputation in that way.
It's so interesting, the approach that you're taking on the B2B side. Like, you think of it as we're going to play golf together, do trade shows, conferences, the outreach programs and everything, and definitely trying to stand out and figuring out ways to get in front of customers that maybe are new to B2C or maybe have been around in B2C for a little bit longer, and trying to kind of port those over. We've spoken with lots of entrepreneurs who B2B e-commerce sites have been a huge part of their success as well, which is obviously a lot less friction in the purchase process. You have to make sure that you have the account management kind of follow up, and the service and quality is there. But a lot of businesses are just looking to interact as frictionless as possible on the B2B side as well. Do you guys have other kind of plans on I guess, new customer acquisition or existing customer demand that you think are interesting for the audience to hear about, and how to differentiate on the B2B businesses?
Yeah, I think that maybe an interesting point there is we know where we're not going. So we know we're not going to B2C. So we've done it. We talked about the towel mill that we owned in Cambridge, Ontario. It was entirely retail. So one of our biggest customers was Walmart. They were about 40% of our revenues of that company, and we understand that business. And personally, not a huge fan of that business. So you're talking about cyclical businesses, seasonal. There's trends, there's colors that go out of style, etc. 90% of the products that we sell are white. And so that's why, going back to that, I don't consider myself an entrepreneur, and I have like a certain tolerance for risk. We like white, right? We sell a lot of white. It doesn't go out of style. And so I think that for us, our path is going to stay down that institutional side, the B2B side. So we know where we're not going, but then in terms of where we are going down that same path, certainly, the U.S. remains a strong market for us. But I think with today, with all the action happening with different trade agreements and where the wind's blowing, there's opportunities that are popping up all over the place. I mean, there's other enormous markets besides the U.S. And so I think that's where we'll continue to explore, but with a focus on what we do best, which is serve, that core group of our institutional clients, but in unique ways by hammering home service and executing on strategy. So I think that we'll stick down that route. But our team is constantly innovating in terms of products every day, and in terms of that. But in terms of who our core target audience is, I think we're sticking to what we know best.
Nice. And talking a little bit about the future, is the plans now to amortize those 5 warehouses in the U.S. and keep hammering? And it sounds like having the U.S. business surpass the Canadian business as the next step. Obviously, global supply chains are shifting. You mentioned the kind of Trump tariffs and equalization of trade around the world as well. So where are you seeing opportunities? How are you thinking about that? And are you guys just kind of staying focused on the U.S., or is there other stuff that's percolating?
Yeah, I mean, so U.S. is obviously a huge market, and we've really only started to scratch the surface of it because it's quite new for us. But I think that the key is to remain nimble, like we said. So in terms of strategy, it can shift from quarter to quarter. I think that our products are in high demand around the world. So I'll give you one example. We've done a lot of innovation in the world of reusable surgical textiles. And so I know this is very niche now, but just to give you an idea, the world's usage of surgical textiles is mainly disposable. So think of the paper kind of plasticky gowns that you wear once and then you throw away. So we identified that as being a real problem in the healthcare industry. We developed an entire line of reusable surgical apparel. And so, with that, there's been white papers, there's been life cycle assessments done by credible organizations that support the fact that reusable programs in a healthcare surgical setting hit the environmental factor. It hits the fiscal factor. In the long run, it's a lot cheaper than using single-use disposable products, and it's a lot more comfortable for the user in that idea. So, a little bit of innovative thinking. I know it's quite niche to the healthcare textile industry, but it is the way we think. And so we think that there's going to be a lot of increasing demand for products like that, right? So it hits the requirements of big institutions like hospitals on hitting their environmental goals and hitting some of their fiscal goals, as well as making life better for the users of the product. So we just see that as such a winner. And so we're going to keep compounding on that idea. We're selling it now quite a bit in Canada. We kind of just got these FDA 510K approvals for the US market. So we're just starting to get more and more integrated in the US market, but meaning the European demand for that product is off the charts as well. So, I think that if we're going to go and seriously expand to other countries around the world besides the US, it would be very much in a sniper kind of view instead of a shotgun view, and focus really on a particular industry for a particular product line and try to expand and get a footprint that way and then grow from there. So it'll probably be through that route.
One of the things I've been thinking about is how Jeff, you're preparing for the next generation, right? So you're the 4th generation in the business, and I guess to use the tech language, you don't own George Courey. You're merely keeping it for the next generation. So how are you, even in this early stage, right? Like you just took over. It's been like a blink of an eye, right? But how are you preparing for the next transition? And what do you hope ultimately to be leaving to the next generation?
It's a good question. So I have a 6-year-old right now. So he's packing boxes in the warehouse as we speak. We try to get him in young, but not that young. So I mean, my brother and I, we have young kids, so it's definitely far too early to see if they're going to have an interest in the business, and certainly we won't push them into the business at all. But I think we have a little bit of a long horizon until we have to look at that. In the more near to short term, I mean, we're trying to build a legacy here. And I think that, we have an organic growth strategy for sure, but M&A has to be part of our future as well. So, we're in a business that's not exactly sexy to a lot of people, for lack of a better term. And so we know that there's a lot of our, competitors and businesses to ours where there's an aging ownership group, and their kids aren't really interested in taking over, that kind of thing. So a lot of opportunities have popped up. So I see some M&A in our future for sure. We're going to get some good organic growth behind us, but and I think that that's also important for a family business. And I think when we first started taking over, we decided, we're a little bit too big now to be considered just a family business. We need to start running this company like a corporation. And so I think that any outsider looking in would say, yeah, you guys are primed for M&A. So it's absolutely a route we're going to go. And if that means, thinking creatively, no equity has ever been given to a non-Courey in the history of our company. And so if that means we have to start thinking differently around that, then we'll explore it. And I think that it's part of building something for the next generation, if they want it. But if they don't, then it's also something that they could be proud of, and they could see, and they can make their own decisions on where they want their futures to lead. So we'll see how it goes. My kid is pretty good at checking quality and seeing the deficiencies in product. We've been training him there. He made a pillow the other day, but we'll see so far if he has an interest. But a little too early for that. But we're going to create something special that they can be proud of, whether they join or not.
Amazing. Yeah, we haven't got our kids involved in any of our businesses directly yet, but talk about it from time to time. And definitely, my guys love to come see the fridge and the freezer and all the big machines and the food coming through and everything. It's always exciting. So, last question we always like to finish on, Jeff, is given our food background and passion, we always like to ask if you could have one meal with anyone kind of in the world, alive or dead, who would it be, and what would the meal be?
So I think who I would most want to have a meal with would probably be my grandfather. And I don't know if that's a little cliche or not, but so my grandfather died when I was very young. But his legacy is still around the halls of George Courey today. And I think he was such a dynamic businessman that I'd love to have a meal with him because he's my grandfather. I'd love to have known him better, but also his knack for business and connecting with people. From all the stories I've heard from the all the long-term employees that we have, is exceptional. From stories from like the guy would just park his car on Park Avenue and run up to do a business meeting, and leaving his kids double parked in the middle of Park Avenue in New York City, and then come down 30 minutes later with a stack of POs. These are the stories that I've been hearing my whole life. I would love to pick his brain there. And then since we're Lebanese heritage, so since he loved that and he had very proud of his heritage, we definitely share some Lebanese food, and probably cooked by my grandma and that whole thing. So I think that's what we would do. That would be great to have one meal with him and pick his brain on the true legacy of George Courey, and see how he envisioned the company playing out in the future, and if we've made him proud. I think that would be really nice to hear.
Amazing. I'm sure he'd be super proud, and I'd love to watch that podcast if we could film that dinner, because I often think about people that have set up businesses that are these multi-generational businesses, and what they would see today, right? Of whatever they passed on, right? If Steve Jobs came back today and saw $3-4 trillion business, they'd be like, oh wow, or your grandfather coming in and walking into the building and seeing all the modernness and different size and scale.
That's it. I would love to know if he was like, yep, okay, so I did it. I left something special. Or if he'd come in and say, what the hell are you guys doing? Why aren't you selling that food?
All right. Well, Thanks, Jeff. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an amazing podcast and discussion with Jeff Courey, CEO of Jeff Courey, one of the leaders in hospitality textiles around North America and soon to be the world. We talked about so many interesting things, entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs. We talked about scaling businesses when demand is being thrown at you. We talked about family transitions. We talked about getting our kids involved early. So many good nuggets there, and I'll definitely have lots of notes and definitely have a rewatch of this one. So thanks for listening to $100 Million Blueprint, the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to grow without losing what makes them great. And until next time, keep building.
That's all for today's episode of $100 Million Blueprint. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps us spread the word to other entrepreneurs and business leaders who need to hear these stories. Want more behind-the-scenes insights, exclusive content, or have a business question you want answered? Connect with us on LinkedIn to find out more. Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow $100 Million Blueprint and to share this episode with your network if you found it valuable, because we're all about growing together. Remember, building a business is tough, but with the right blueprint, you can scale authentically and sustainably. Thanks again for listening. Keep pushing forward, and we'll see you next time on $100 Million Blueprint.